Hello, YouTube. So, I recently took an interest in getting into the Mongoose Traveller second edition, and something that I find I always struggle with when starting to get into new RPG is getting the basic rules down and getting character creation down. It happened for me in Pathfinder, it's happened for me in Dungeons and Dragons, and it's happening for me in Traveller. And so I thought I'd go through and create a few low production videos detailing my setup for running games of Traveller using Foundry Virtual Tabletop and through going through the character creation process for a few characters using that setup. So, full disclosure, I haven't run any games with this setup so far. This is just as far as I've gotten it. I have made a few example characters with some friends just to see how it rolls, and it seems to roll fairly smoothly. Um, There are some hiccups there and here and there, mainly a lot of scrolling through the core rulebook PDF, which unfortunately I think is just simply unavoidable at this point for me because I just don't know the rules well enough. Once I start to get the rules down, I'll be able to supplement a lot of that scrolling with just my inherent knowledge from having used and read the books. So I think we'll just start from the beginning. First thing you need to do to follow through with my setup is you need to purchase and install Foundry Virtual Tabletop. This can be done at FoundryVTT.com. You'll have to make an account, make a one-time purchase of the software, which I believe is $50. Um, and then I guess if you are a former or current Patreon supporter, you get a discount. Reason that I like Foundry VTT. So Foundry VTT is a one-time purchase. It's $50 and you own it forever. It is not like Roll20 where it is a constant subscription, and it is not like Fantasy Grounds, which is a big upfront price tag, but a lot of benefits to go along with that. There are strengths and cons to both, and there are strengths and cons to all of the other VTTs out there. Foundry is just what I prefer to use. I like the one-time purchase. I like that only the DM has to have the software. All of the players just play through their browser. And I absolutely adore the module system that exists for Foundry. It adds an insane amount of customizability, automation, and just quality of life improvement for a virtual tabletop software. So Foundry is my choice. You're free to use anything else you want to. I know Fantasy Grounds in particular can be really, really good, especially for official content. I know, as far as I know, Fantasy Grounds is the only virtual tabletop with sponsored official content from Mongoose Traveller Edition. So if you have the capital to just fucking throw at it, you can purchase and have everything set up and ready to go for Fantasy Grounds or using Fantasy Grounds. My poison of choice is Foundry Virtual Tabletop, so let's jump into it. Like I said, step one, purchase and download Foundry Virtual Tabletop. And once you do so, you will have an icon on your computer. I suggest you run it as an administrator pretty much at all times. Reason being is that when I run Foundry Virtual Tabletop and I find that I have a full system update, it will not update unless I run from administrator. So I've just made it a habit to run from administrator every single time. And when you have it open, you open it up. This is what it looks like. I am currently on version 11, build 308. Yours may vary. If you're in the near future, this probably won't look too different. If you're in the far future, this may look very different. So you'll have to adapt and overcome, according to what update you're on. So fresh start. First thing I'm going to do for Traveller, I'm going to go to the Game Systems tab right here, and I'm going to install system. The system I'm looking for is the Twad 6, Cepheus or Cephas, and Traveller unofficial game rules. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to install, and then I'm going to click this little GitHub link underneath it and open up the GitHub. So with the GitHub open, I'm going to scroll down, and I want to look for this line, which links me to the docsmd and the wiki. I want to click on the wiki link, and then on this navigation pane on the right-hand side, I want to go to the system configuration guide. And going through this wiki, you can read up on this rule set system. Basically, this rule set system is created for the Cepheus engine or Cephas engine. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that, which is open to the public. There are different tabletop RPGs based off of these systems, and as you can see as you scroll through this, there are different versions of this. You have Deluxe, Light, Light Upgraded, Faster Than Light, Atom, Barbaric, Quantum, and we're going to scroll down. We want MGT2, Mongoose Traveller 2nd Edition. Once you get down there, we're going to open up Foundry Virtual Tabletop, close out of our game system selection. We're going to swap over to the Game Worlds tab. We're going to create a new world. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, we're going to go to add-on modules. We're going to put in a few modules that just make things a little easier for my taste. First up, I want Dice So Nice. Install that. And then I want Dice Spray. Maybe with this space. And then the last one I want, it won't be necessary for this. I'm just going to get those two for now. Swap back to our game worlds. I'm going to create a new world. Name it whatever you want. My one will be YouTube example. Data path I leave default. You could change it to whatever you want. Game system, you're choosing the Twad 6, Cepheus, and Traveller unofficial. Background images, select what you want. Join page theme, default or minimal, they both work. I personally like minimal, so that's what I use. And then hit create world. We have our world table. Hover over it, click the play icon. Log in as game master. There is no password right now. And we're in. You should read these intro messages. Tells you how to get started, have some useful links for creating actors, user management, scenes, journal entries, and such. It also talks about inviting your players and how to get through all of that. Very important for once you actually want to play. For now, I'm just going to delete them because I know that stuff. And we're going to get started with setup. First things first, I want to go to our settings page, our settings panel, top right, game settings. We're going to go to manage modules, and we're going to enable both of the two modules that we downloaded. Click save module settings. It'll reload our environment. This new message will pop up. This is the dice settings for your Dice So Nice. If you want to open that right now, you can. Click on it. It'll let you customize your dice. I personally use the standard Starry Night. Just save. You can play around with that. Choose whatever things you want. Mess around with it to your heart's content. If you delete this message and you find you want to do it again, or you want to go through those settings again, you go back to the game settings, configure settings, and then select the Dice So Nice, and there is your 3D dice settings, as well as a few other options. For now, we're going to stay in the settings panel, and we're going to choose the Twad 6, Cepheus, and Traveller unofficial, and we're going to open up the advanced rule set settings. Going back to that Git page we opened, what we're going to do essentially is we're going to copy and make these changes to our game system settings in Foundry Virtual Tabletop to very closely mimic Mongoose Traveller 2nd Edition. And so from the top bottom, this is what we do. So first up, choose the CE difficulty list. So in Foundry, right now, advanced rule set settings, we want the difficulty list, select which variance difficulty list should be used, CE. Next, initiative formula, we're changing that to this formula. What I suggest you do instead of trying to copy it or retype it is to select everything within the quotations, not the quotations themselves, just everything within. Control C to copy. Open this up, find your initiative formula, which is the very top thing, and then delete that and paste over it. Back to GitHub, we're changing the modifier for a characteristic of 0 to -3 rather than -2. Scroll down, modifier for characteristic value of 0, we're changing it from -3 instead of -2. Handling difficulties by changing the target number rather than adding / subtracting modifiers. That is, here we go. Under roles, second option, use target numbers rather than modifiers for difficulties. Check that box. Rename advantage to boon and disadvantage to bane. So these are our advantage, disadvantage. With boon, you would roll 3d6, drop the lowest. With bane, you would roll 3d6, drop the highest. Next up, we have CEL style auto fire rules, and then make sure weapons have a single number for the rate of fire / auto X setting. So the first part, CEL style auto fire rules, that is second option right here, CEL style variant auto / burst fire rules. And then the second half of that, which is making sure weapons have a single number, that is happening when you create weapons. So you will have to create every item and weapon and armor that you wish to use within your game. Because there is no sponsored content, you have to make it all yourself. When you make your weapons, you need to make sure that their rate of fire / auto X setting is a single number. Next on the list, we're changing our what effect if above 0 is required for a throw to be considered a critical success. We're changing that setting to 6. We're going to scroll down, looking for, I believe it's in a roll actually. Yeah, here we go. We're changing what effect is required for a throw to be considered a critical success. 6. Next, we're changing another formula. We're changing our encumbrance formula to this one in here. And there is a second part to this that says to set our fraction of maximum encumbrance when encumbrance roll modifier applies to 0.5. So I'm copying this formula. Again, everything within the quotes, not the quotes themselves. We're scrolling down to encumbrance. And I'm changing my formula, replacing it with that one. And then the fraction is going to be 0.5. For me, it's already filled in. For you, it may be different. Just change it to 0.5 if it is not 0.5. Next, set the animals use hits for damage option to true. That's at the bottom. Animals use hits for damage, true. Factor to multiply the weight value of an equipped armor to 0.25. That, I believe, is actually outside of this menu. So we're going to save changes. We're going to scroll down. Very bottom option, we want to change that to 0.25. And they're going to reopen our advanced rule set. And then we want to do animal types are independent of leech to true. So fourth option down here, true. And then show degrees of success from non-attack rolls to other. That's up in combat. Rolls, perhaps. Yes, here we go. Show degrees of success for non-attack rolls, other. There we go. We're going to save changes, and our rule settings are set up according to this wiki. This may be different depending on how far in the future you're doing, but this is what we have so far. So our rule set is set up for Mongoose Traveller 2nd edition, and we're ready to get started really integrating things. So I'm going to close out of that wiki page, close out of the Foundry Virtual Tabletop. I just have my Foundry Virtual Tabletop open. Next thing I do is I go to my compendiums, and right now we currently have a copy of the 2nd edition skills, or the Cephas edition. And I have a copy of the Traveller 2022 core rulebook that I purchased. Unfortunately, I will not be able to show you every single part of this. I think that's just a copyright infringement, and I'm not willing to risk that. But essentially, this list of 2nd edition skills is very, very close to the Traveller core rulebook set. So what I suggest you do is I want you to right-click this. I want you to import all the content. You can make a folder or use an existing folder. I'm going to call it MGT2 space skills. And then I'm going to hit yes. It'll import that compendium to your items tab under this folder, whatever you named it. And then what you want to do is you want to go through this list, adding and deleting every skill that is or isn't in the core rulebook for Traveller 2nd Edition. So I'm going to do that right now. And what I'll do is I'll make a list of the differences and I'll update you guys on it when I get back. Alrighty, I'm back. So what I did was I opened up the core rulebook, dropped down to the skills section, and I went through and I compared it to my list of skills in here. And here's a list of the changes I made. Really, most of it was adding a general version of each skill. So, for example, animals, art, athletics, engineering, I needed a general engineering skill, general athletics skill, just to cover that level 0 in athletics. That level 0 that you achieve in the parent skill when you achieve a level 1 in one of the specialties. So, for those of you that don't know, if you get, say, M Drive Engineering 1, your other engineering skills automatically become a 0. So instead of dragging those over and adding those individually to the character sheet, I create an overall engineering skill that is level 0. And when your specialty is used, you would use your specialty, M Drive. And when any other engineering check is asked for, you use the regular engineering roll, which would be a 0. I had to delete a few extra skills. The archery skill is not in my copy of the Traveller 2nd Edition. I renamed the hover drive skill to hovercraft, just to match a little better. The gun combat skills, I had in my FoundryVTT, I had a skill for long arms and short arms for both slug and energy. In the core rulebook, there is only one. There is gun combat slug and gun combat energy. So I just deleted one of those two, and I will use the other one. In fact, I will actually rename them right now because that is smart. So I will just rename my gun combat energy to energy long arm to energy, and then gun combat slug long arm to just slug. And then the gun combats, I deleted those skills, added some more generals. I had to add the other language skills. The only language that was in the game is English, and that isn't part of the core rulebook. So I deleted that one and added the other ones. I added the melee skills, again, another general one. Same for pilot, profession, science, seafarer, tactics. And other than that, I just made sure it matched. So that's the big step. That's the real difficult thing. What I suggest you do after you get to this point is come up here and I want you to right click this and export to compendium. You need to create a compendium first. So go to your compendium tab, create compendium. I'm going to call this MGT2 skills. It's an actor, or it's an item document type. Create it. Go back here to my items, export to compendium, destination pack, MGT2 skills, export. And what this does is it exports that as a compendium. And if you do some research, you will find a way to take these compendiums and use them in your other systems. So if you ever decide to create a new Traveller world, you want to run a different campaign, you should be able to take this compendium and put it in that campaign, saving you the 15, 20 minutes of work that we just had to do to get this set up. So once you're there, you're pretty much ready to go. The only things left to do are to familiarize yourself with how Foundry Virtual Tabletop works, watch some videos, read some documentation. There's a really good knowledge base on the Foundry Virtual Tabletop website, and there are a ton of videos showing you how to use this tabletop software. Most of them are geared towards like D&D and Pathfinder. but there is a lot of takeaways you can get from watching these videos. Other than that, you can return to your setup, learn how to add users to your group and get that set up, learn how to enable your port or forward your ports so that you can let users reconnect or connect to your setup, so on and so forth. Just learn how to use the software. Besides this, the only other pieces of advice that I can give you would be some extra modules. So give me 1 second and I will see if I can find a few modules to showcase and help you all with. Alrighty, folks. So I just did a quick little look through of the modules, and honestly, the only thing that stood out for me was this pings module. I went to install it, and it did have 2 dependencies. One was the libwrapper and settings extender. It gives you an option to automatically install those. Hit yes, but wait for it all to install, and then reopen up your game, your world. Go back to settings. You want to go to manage modules, enable all of your modules. Hit save settings. It'll reload your setup again. Once it's ready, basically what the pings module does is if you have a scene open, you can left click and hold, and it'll ping that for all of your players to see. And your players can do that as well. If you want to change any settings, you open up the game settings, and you change the pings. So I can make the game master the only one that can ping. I can change which button does it. If there's a move screen pinging, so if I shift left click, it'll move all of my player screens to where my mouse is. This is how long you have to press. There's another key modification, same thing. You show the name of the player who pinged. You can change the image of it, the size, the duration, all sorts of things you can play with. That's really the big thing is look for modules. Don't go crazy. Don't get a ton of modules. Play a little bit, figure out what you might need, and try to find a module that fits that need and fixes the problem. Alrighty, and I believe that's going to wrap up this video. If there are any mistakes that I made in this, please feel free to let me know in the comments down below. Like I said, I haven't actually played using this system. I've just made a few example characters, and I do plan to make a few more videos, basically just going through the basic character creation process, and I hope this helped you out. It's a tiny bit of work to get started, but I think it'll pay off. And as I said before, if you really get into Foundry Virtual Tabletop, you start looking at modules and looking deep and reading into what you can possibly do. The potential for this virtual tabletop is insane, but it can also be used to play just simple games. So thanks for watching, and see you guys later.